So, My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 327 has officially released, and there's a lot that we need to talk about in this chapter. We need to talk about whether or not the final fight is going to take place in a month, how potentially Jiro and the rest of them are going to cheer the people up, and whether or not they're going to drown Bakugo. Yeah, that's a very important part, and we need to know right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my discussion of My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 327, as well as talk about the differences between the official and unofficial translations. And overall, there was not that many differences when it comes to the context of the story between the official and unofficial translations. There are a few, and I think I'm going to try to speed through these a little bit more so that I can get to the real major discussion part of this video, which is primarily going to be a discussion slash prediction on what the 2 points that I really want to talk about in this chapter are going to be about, specifically what Jiro is going to do with the other students. There are some ideas floating around and I want to talk about it, as well as explain the time frame of when everything has gone on from the Deku versus the Assassins arc, and how that may play a bigger role in the story. So we'll just jump right into the differences between the official and unofficial translations, and a lot of it just has to deal with the actual text and how certain things are portrayed. For instance, within the first part of the chapter, where you see that everyone is throwing Deku into the water, you have Bakugo yelling at everyone about how the bathroom is dirty and how they need to follow specific instructions. In actuality, from what we see in the official translations in comparison to the unofficial translation, Bakugo isn't screaming the entire 2 bubbles. One of them is Bakugo and the other one is Kirishima, where Bakugo is saying that everything is dirty, when in actuality, Kirishima is the one that says that they need to follow the instructions as suggested. So that's just a slight difference. It doesn't really change anything, it just gives Kirishima a little bit more to say. And then we see another difference within the dialogue upon the next page, where you have Bakugo announcing that he views everyone as a rival, including Deku, as he tries to correct himself by calling Deku Izuku, but that in the unofficial translations, they bring up this idea that, yeah, we'll do exactly that. It's great to have ambitions. Let's go drown Bakugo. Yeah, that is completely absent in the official translations. That has something to do more with them messing around with the unofficial translations, which is something that I kind of pretty much expected. All they really say is that, oh yeah, that's fine. It's great for you to have that. We'll keep up with you at the same time, as well as we will beat you, which causes Bakugo to respond with, "What? You fat chance," or something to that akin. So yeah, that is a slight difference there. And then we get to a little bit more of a more impactful difference when it comes to a few scenes after Deku and All Might's apology, where you have Shoto, who brings up this idea that the reasoning why Endeavor isn't around is because the people don't really want him there due to his connections with Dabi, and how in the unofficial translations they bring up this idea that there are some people who still respect Endeavor, while in the official translation they bring up how it didn't change the hearts of the evacuees in the official translation. So that is a really impactful difference, because it makes more sense for the idea that they haven't changed all of the people's hearts as it applies to them, as it comes to the idea of the student trying to convince the people for allowing Deku to stay, because it doesn't mean that they have complete hope in the heroes, but that they may have complete hope in Deku and the students, and not necessarily in all the pro heroes. So it makes sense for them to bring up this idea that they haven't changed all of the evacuees' hearts, and how they may be still hesitant about Endeavor and Shoto due to their connections with Dabi, which that same line of dialogue even bleeds over to what Jiro says when she does that same reference in the unofficial translations as the people respecting them, while in the official translations being the change of heart hasn't occurred. And then we have another slight difference, and this is pretty much the final differences in this chapter, and it has to deal with Jiro and what she says in her speech. The first part of her speech, she talks about how the situation is very similar to how the people felt during the cultural festival, and in the unofficial translation, she brings up that we'll find a way to do something about it. There's something that we can think of that we can do to help. That's what she says in the unofficial translations, but more in the official translations, she says that she has an idea that might just help. And I think it's very impactful that Jiro has an idea because of the relationship that she brings up to the situation being very similar to the cultural festival, and that now she's taking a initiative and that she already has a plan in mind. Now, what could that plan be? I'm going to talk about a little bit more, but we're going to get to the final difference in this chapter, which is a very small difference. It comes after Jiro is about to say go beyond, where she brings up the idea that they're going to pretty much like fix society, make a better society for everyone, and how they're all going to do it together. That is what she says in the official translation, but in the unofficial translations, she says that they're going to fix the world. They're not going to go back to the same world that it was, and that they're going to better themselves as individuals. And I think that either way, it really doesn't matter, but it kind of makes more sense for them to say that they're going to do it together instead of saying that they're going to better themselves as individuals, because for the most part, they've already done that. So with that, let's go back and talk about Jiro's idea and what she could possibly be planning to help the people. And there are a few ideas that are floating around. People are suggesting that there's going to be a hero prom. And I'm like, that's actually not that bad of an idea, having a hero prom. Something that probably will be very impromptu. It's not going to be very spectacular, because even though Jiro compares this to the cultural festival and how they're going to cheer people up, it's not like they can have a complete cultural festival since, society is crumbling. But I can see like a prom where they get everyone at the facility or everyone who's at UA and just have like not necessarily a prom, but like just a small party to help uplift the people's like spirits a little bit, giving them a little bit joy during these times of turmoil and these times of just like horror, and not necessarily have a full-blown contest, but just have like the people who we see in this chapter, the people that are in the band, play a few songs to try and help get the people's spirits up a little bit more. It's not going to completely change everything, and it may be a slight shift in tone, but I think that the purpose of it was to be make everyone have like a happier like feeling, make everyone feel a little bit more uplifted during these times of dread, because just being sad during these times isn't going to help anything. It's better to be hopeful, and if anything, what they're doing is showing that they don't just care about the people just to save them, but they also care about their emotional well-being. So I think that them having a prom and them potentially putting on like a mini concert wouldn't be that bad of an idea, because the purpose of it were to help uplift the people. So I can see that happening, but as far as we know, it could be something completely different, that they could just do something very minimal and just go around and just constantly help the civilians with anything that they need to do. Like if someone needs help getting like something from a tall shelf, they can do that. Or if someone's having a hard time taking care of their baby, they can help do that. Maybe her idea is to help the civilians who are at UA with small mini things before they go out and try to stop the villains. So there's like a few things that we can get from there. It seems to heavily imply that they're going to do something that's related to being similar to the cultural festival, because Jiro brings up how the situation is very similar to that when it comes to trying to cheer up the people. But it does not necessarily mean that's going to be a one-to-one thing where they're actually going to have a concert where they're going to do everything that they did at the cultural festival on a smaller scale. It could just be that she's comparing it to that situation, but she has a completely different plan, which I still find interesting and amazing, because it shows that Jiro is once again taking the initiative to come up with a plan, showing that. And I would just really love for this plan to involve music, because if you remember correctly, it was during the cultural festival, not only where she got more resolve to be a hero, but to be a hero while combining it with her hobby, making people happy and like saving them with her music, both literally with her quirk and metaphorically with her actual singing. So yeah, I would just like for the plan at one way or another to combine Jiro singing with the ability to help save the people, because that's just kind of what is involved in her character. So yeah, going from Jiro and saving people, let's go towards the end of this chapter, where at the end of this chapter we got a strong focus on Hawks, Genus, and Endeavor, and how they're basically comparing the information that they got from Dr. Garaki as well as the other specific hospital doctors. And when it comes to the final time frame for when all of this is going to go down, the fight between Shigaraki and Deku, and how that's all going to go down within a month. And there seems to be a little bit confusion about what this actually entails. So I think I'm going to give like a little bit of understanding for what actually might have gone down when it comes to this 2-month versus 1-month scenario. So pretty much what Hawks and Genis are talking about with Endeavor most likely is that what happened after the war, we know for a fact that what we know for a fact is that Shigaraki's body was not complete, that it was only at around 75% completed, and that even though Dr. Garaki tried to speed up that process even more, he was very unsuccessful at that. And even though we thought that Shigaraki died, he was able to pretty much bring himself back to life, but he was only 75%. And what we know is that Shigaraki was supposed to be complete within 4 months, and that this process most likely started towards the beginning of January, towards the end of January, and that it most likely would have been finished by the beginning of May or the end of May, giving us that 4-month time frame, that 4-month time frame that was brought up by Toga and was given to the heroes by Hawks when he was infiltrating the villa and the Paranormal Liberation Front. So you may be wondering, okay, it's been 4 months between January, the raid took place in March. Doesn't that mean that already 3 months have passed, and that shouldn't it be a month before Shigaraki should be fully completed? To which I would say yes and no. We could assume that the 2 months could be the 2 months that was predicted for the Paranormal Liberation Front attack for Shigaraki being completed, but most likely that's not the case. But we have to remember that Shigaraki awakened early at 75%, and literally completely wrecked his body in the fight. He had to literally decay an entire city, had to go one-on-one with Endeavor. Even though he has a regeneration quirk, he also had to go up against Eraserhead, nullifying his quirks, but his body was so durable that he was taking Endeavor's Fire Blast one at a time while taking a full blast attack from Deku and Bakugo. And then once his quirk got reactivated, had to literally survive Deku's onslaught of blow after blow after blow, and then another finisher from Endeavor. Like, he took massive damage in the war, and that probably affected his body, which is why it is stated that he will need 2 months of rest before he's completed. So that pretty much means that everything that happened at the fight and the war with Shigaraki may have pushed his time frame of rest back by another month, meaning that instead of needing an additional month or a half to actually be completed, he needs additional more time because his body had gone through a whole lot of heavy damage. And because that all started after the war in Tartarus, get a concrete understanding that a month has passed since the Tartarus breakout and this point in the story. The Tartarus breakout, Deku leaving UA, Deku fighting Muscular, Deku fighting Lady Nagant, Deku being on his own, that all happened within a month. And they only recently got the information from Stain that gave them all the records on Tartarus, meaning that they now have, for the most part, a full compiled list of everyone that is going to be the heavy hitters on All For One's team. And now they have an entire month or so to plan for what they need to do to take down Shigaraki and All For One. So it's very interesting to see that everything that's happened so far has happened with the time span of a month, but it makes sense. A decent amount of time has passed. Most likely Deku had taken like maybe a week or two to fight Muscular and Lady Nagant, and that there was a week or two where he was on his own. And if that's the case, it only takes 2 weeks for Deku to be alone to almost kill himself. So, you know, that's going to be ugh. But yeah, at the very least, we now have a general idea of where the story is moving right now. The heroes have 1 month to come up with a plan, which, you know what? It's actually a fair amount of time for them to do that. It took them 2 or 3 months to come up with a plan to pretty much take down the entirety of the Paranormal Liberation Front. And if it wasn't for, you know, Shigaraki's awakening and coming back from the dead, oh, the heroes would have definitely won that. Like, Giganto Makia would not have gone on the rampage because Shigaraki would be quote-unquote dead, and all of the Paranormal Liberation Front members would have definitely be arrested. So the heroes have the capability to do so. They may not have the manpower, but they do have a lot of still strong heavy hitters like Mount Lady, Kamui Woods, Edgeshot, Endeavor, Best Genius Hawks, and even some heavy hitters from the students. And we have to remember Mirio is still in the format as well. So Mirio, Deku, Deku, Bakugo, and Shoto are here as well as just creative and like just ingenious members such as Nezu and even Momo, who was able to take down Gigantomachia. They have a lot of people, so they can come up with a good strategy and a good plan to take on All For One within that time span of a month. And potentially that plan could involve them leading the villains to UA and having it be sort of a trap for them, where during that time where everyone has already been evacuated, they try to invade UA, it's no one there, and then that fortress becomes a battlefield where the villains can escape, and it's going to be the last place where the heroes have their final stand to stop All For One. And here's something very interesting. During that month, we don't know what happened between Shigaraki and All For One. We know that All For One was sending assassins to take care of Deku, but we don't know how many times when he's done that. We know that he kind of like planned for Lady Nagin to fail, but we don't know what actually happened, and we could potentially have a My Villain Academia Part 2 in the manga, where we see what the villains are doing during that month, how Shigaraki is resting, and how in actuality he may not be resting at all, and that he may be plotting to try and take down his own master of All For One, where they have this massive fight somewhere in Japan where apparently the heroes had no idea what's going on, and that Shigaraki wins and he begins to take over, which could lead into that other month where he just rests, and after he feels as if he's fully completed, he then goes and invades UA to try and take back Deku, because he's the one that knows exactly where Deku is, because he's the one that has the pure quirk of All For One with Ragdoll's quirk to see where people are. So that's going to be very interesting if that's something that we get confirmation of within the next few chapters, a My Villain Academia Part 2. So yeah, if I were to make any predictions on what I think is going to be going on in the next few chapters, I think either we're going to follow up with what Jiro says about her plan and how she's going to give everyone most likely a way of smiling, hopefully through her singing, because we're already sort of kind of in a tone where it's a little bit more lighthearted, so it would make a little bit more sense to have them do something a little bit more lighthearted to get the people's hopes and dreams and like their spirits up a little bit more. Or we're going to see a different plan that she came up with that may be related to singing or completely different, but we'll focus a little bit more on that. Or we're going to follow up on the heroes' plan and what they're going to do with the information. We may even get a confirmation of all of the individuals from the security records on Taurus. That would be very cool if we just have an entire chapter talking about, oh, here's Moonfish, here's Chimera, here's X, here's Y, here's Z. Yeah, Z's going to be very important in the future. That may be something that we get next chapter or within the next few chapters. Or, and I think this may be the most least likely, but would be like the most like anticipated, is if we actually cut over to Shigaraki and what he's doing and what he did in sort of a flashback arc where we see what he was doing this entire time and how he may have built different relationships with the villains as like partners and equals, while with All For One, he views them as underlings and superiors. So that'll be a very interesting dynamic if we see that next chapter. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about this chapter. If there's anything that I couldn't think of, leave your thoughts in the comments down below. What did you think of this chapter? What do you think is going to be going on next chapter? Do you like the idea of Jiro and the other classmates putting on like a small concert to help lift the spirits up? Or do you think that's going to be a very drastic difference in tone? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below, as well as leave a like on the video if you really like this type of content. I really like making these videos, as well as subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to be notified for whenever I upload more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!